Holy Cross is a perfect opportunity for Syracuse to play some players that we don't normally see on a regular basis. Here are some players to look out for this week.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, we are going over some players, young guys, backups that don't normally see the field for Syracuse football, but with Holy Cross in town Saturday at noon, they could be seeing the field. So we'll start with offense. Then we'll go to defense, and then I will give you guys my Holy Cross prediction for this week. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So once again, Syracuse is facing Holy Cross this Saturday at noon, and this is a great opportunity going against an FCS school to play some players that don't normally see the field on a regular basis for this team, right? This is one of those games where you are hoping that Syracuse is up by 50 points at one point and you can play a backup quarterback. And speaking of a backup quarterback, let's get right to the list. And the first player that I would keep your eye out on for is Michael Johnson Jr. He is 6'3", 215 pounds. He is a quarterback and a redshirt senior and an FAU transfer from this offseason. He is also the son of the co-offensive coordinator and tight ends coach, Michael Johnson. When Johnson Jr. transferred to Syracuse, if you recall, the graphic that Syracuse football posted on its Twitter account said that he was a quote-unquote weapon, which again, I've never seen before. And so far, we haven't seen Johnson Jr. actually be used in a game yet this season. But if he were to see some playing time, I would be really excited. He and Carlos Del Rio Wilson battled in training camp for who would be the backup quarterback on this team. We had a long discussion about it. And thankfully, we haven't had to see who actually won that battle. Every time Fran Brown has released the depth chart for a Syracuse game, he has an or. It's Michael Johnson Jr. or Carlos Del Rio Wilson. So we actually don't know the backup, but I'm hoping that it is Michael Johnson Jr. because we have seen Carlos Del Rio Wilson before, what he can do, what he can't do. Michael Johnson Jr. has only attempted one career pass in college, and that came at FAU last season. But he's ran the ball, he's caught the ball. I'm very curious to see what he would be able to do at quarterback should he see the field. He is number 9 if he does see the field. So once again, Michael Johnson Jr., I am very curious to see if he is going to get playing time at some point. And a quick disclaimer, of course, you got to start your starters, right? Syracuse is going to start their starters. Kyle McCord is going to play. It's just hopefully you can get to the point where you don't need your starters in the game anymore. That's the idea with Holy Cross in town this week. Let's now move over to a true freshman, and that is Emanuel Ross, 6'2", 200 pounds, a 4-star wide receiver from the most recent recruiting cycle in 2024. He has only played 10 snaps so far this season. All 10 of those snaps came against Ohio. He did not see the field against Georgia Tech, but I do believe he was active. But last week, he missed the Stanford game due to injury. On the depth chart, he is listed as the wide receiver 6, which is the backup slot receiver. So again, it's a weird depth chart quirk. I think we'd all agree that Trevor Pena so far has been maybe even the number 1 option on the entire offense, but at least the number 1 wide receiver. He's technically listed as the 3 because he is the slot receiver. So Emanuel Ross is behind him as the 6, which would make him the backup slot receiver. But it's very curious because he's big body and Hopefully he can be a big piece for the future. Right now, with the receiver depth that Syracuse has, he really hasn't seen the field all that much. And by the way, he's number 18 if he does see some action. I'm hoping that Syracuse does play him at some point. It would be nice to see Michael Johnson Jr. throwing passes to Emanuel Ross. And I missed this point about Michael Johnson Jr., that there's talk that it was from earlier this offseason. It might have been from Emily Liker, that Syracuse's coaching staff was actually thinking about him as a potential quarterback one of the future. So he would be maybe throwing passes to Emanuel Ross in 2025. Who knows? That's all I'm saying. Maybe we can see a little bit of a glimpse of that this week against Holy Cross. And third on the offense, for a guy who we don't normally see, but could see the field because it's Holy Cross this week. I'm a little bit cheating with this one, but I'm going to say Malachi James. Malachi James is 5'11", 195 pounds, and a 3-star running back, true freshman. The reason why I am putting Malachi James in this category is because we've seen him on the field. He is the starting kick returner and the punt returner, but we haven't seen him in the backfield yet. I don't believe he's taken a snap on offense. And with Holy Cross in town this week, I'm hoping that at some point we can see Malachi James in the backfield or as a wide receiver, whatever it may be. I just hope he gets some snaps on offense. He's actually one of the fastest players in all of college football. And it's not hyperbole. It is not exaggeration. He ran, according to the Syracuse website, a 10.18 100 meter, which is the fastest time in the state of New Jersey's history. So this dude is fast, Malachi James. And once again, similar to Emanuel Ross, he could really be a big piece to the future of Syracuse's offense. And we've seen glimpses of that from running backs in the past. The biggest example I have is, think about LaQuinn Allen. The first time that we really got a look of LaQuinn Allen was against Wagner a couple years ago. If you recall that Wagner game where Syracuse was up by so much that they, in the second half, put 10-minute quarters in a running time. I've never seen that, and still I've never seen that to this day, other than that one time. LaQuinn Allen had a 90-yard touchdown run in that one, and it kind of put the seed in the back of our minds that, you know, when Sean Tucker does leave, because he left after that year, Syracuse would be in good hands with LaQuinn Allen. Lo and behold, he starts the bowl game, has a good bowl game, and you know the rest from there. He becomes the starting running back. So it could be a similar situation with Malachi James. I could say Yassine Willis as well, but we have seen Yassine Willis on the field, and this isn't me criticizing him whatsoever, but we've seen him on the field taking snaps at running back. Okay, he's a true freshman as well. We just haven't seen it from Malachi James. Malachi James is number 36 in case you do see him on the field. You will see him on the field as a kick returner or punt returner, but hopefully you see him in the backfield behind whoever is in at quarterback for Syracuse in this one. Hopefully it's not Kyle McCord the entire game, right? So the three players on offense that I would most be looking forward to watching if the time warrants for it, if the situation warrants it, Michael Johnson Jr., Emanuel Ross, and Malachi James. Once again, Syracuse is facing Holy Cross this Saturday at noon. Holy Cross is an FCS school. Syracuse should really win this game with a breeze. There shouldn't be much of a sweat. So we are going over players that normally don't see the field that could see some time because it's Holy Cross week. So we've done the offense. Let's do the defense right after this. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And I know a lot of you guys that watch this channel, that listen to this channel, are Buffalo Bills fans. Congratulations on the 3-0 start and the absolute beatdown on Monday night against the Jaguars. Buffalo is actually an underdog this week in Baltimore on Sunday night to face the Ravens. It might be one of the very few times this season that the Bills are underdogs. So if you want to bet it, just visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. Here are some defensive players that I would love to see should the situation warrant it against Holy Cross. Once again, the objective for this game is to get out to a huge lead and then have the backups and some of the true freshmen come in that don't normally see the field. So this episode is previewing some of those guys that we could see on the field that don't normally see action on Saturday. We just went over the offense. Let's go to the defense. But wait, quick disclaimer. Okay. I should have mentioned this at the top of the podcast, but you can play in 4 games before the redshirt year expires. What do I mean by that? Well, a redshirt year is you get to sit out a season of college football, but not use that year of eligibility. And you get up to 4 games in a season to be able to use it. All right? That's the disclaimer for you. Now let's go to the defensive players. And this one that we're going to talk about coming up right here is really, really exciting. Could be, once again, a huge piece to the future for Syracuse, but on the defensive end, I know a lot of people were excited for him when he committed here. KingJosepth Edwards, 6'4", 225-pound edge rusher, and a 4-star true freshman. He has been on the depth chart for every game so far for Syracuse. He has been on the depth chart, but he is yet to record a statistic in a game. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Once again, it's hard for true freshmen to see playing time in their true freshman years. There are so many examples across college football and even with Syracuse with the guys that do nothing in their true freshman year and then become great players. Oronde Gadsden, do you remember what he did his true freshman year? I bet you don't, because he didn't do anything. Look at what he became, albeit, last game wasn't very good against Stanford, but you get the point, right? So it doesn't really matter in that aspect, but at the same time, if KingJoseph Edwards does see the field on Saturday, I would be very, very excited. He is listed as one of the backups at DN to Fadil Diggs, and hopefully, Fadil Diggs is arguably the best defender on the team for Syracuse. So hopefully he doesn't have to play the entire game, and you can have a guy like KingJoseph Edwards step in. KingJoseph Edwards had a very nice spring game, albeit it was against mostly the second teamers, but still he had a very nice spring game. He is number 19, so keep an eye out for him if he does see the field. But I am very curious to see what it would look like with KingJoseph Edwards on the field. It could give us a good feel for the future. So that's KingJoseph Edwards for you. Number 2 on the defense, actually the next 2 are going to be defensive backs. Braheem Long Jr., 6 foot, 175-pound safety. He is a 3-star recruit and currently listed as one of the backup safeties behind Elijah Clark. And similar to KingJoseph Edwards, I believe that Braheem Long has been on the depth chart for every game, but he does have 1 tackle. That I will say. He does have 1 tackle. He does have a statistic. That tackle came against Georgia Tech. This was someone who was an all-state player for the state of New Jersey last season, a consensus top 50 player overall in the state. 3-star recruit coming into Syracuse. He is number 26. Hopefully he sees the field, right? He is a backup behind, once again, a veteran in Elijah Clark. You hope that in this game against Holy Cross, that Elijah Clark does not have to play the entire game. You hope that he doesn't have to do it. All right. And when we get to the prediction time later on, I'll tell you guys exactly what I am looking for in this one. All right. But that is Braheem Long Jr. So far on the defense, we got KingJoseph Edwards and the aforementioned Braheem Long Jr. Finally, the third player that I am really looking forward to potentially seeing for Syracuse, should the situation and time call for it, is Ivan McDaniels, 6'3", 200-pound corner. He is a 3-star recruit coming in from this most recent recruiting cycle, and he is listed as one of the backup corners to Clarence Lewis. So again, not to sound like a broken record, but look, you got KingJosepth Edwards, who backs up Fadil Diggs. You got Braheem Long Jr., who backs up Elijah Clark. You have Ivan McDaniels, who backs up Clarence Lewis. Those are 3 of the better starters on Syracuse's defense right now. You would hope that they don't have to see the field that much against Holy Cross because Syracuse takes care of business. So once again, Ivan McDaniels, he was a top 25 prospect out of New Jersey in the most recent recruiting cycle. This is according to 24/7 Sports. And he actually played wide receiver too in high school and was pretty good at the position, had over 700 yards. I read on his bio. Take that for what it's worth. If he does see the field, I doubt it'll be at wide receiver. I think it would be at his normal position, which is corner. But it's still something, to keep in mind that, hey, maybe that if the situation calls for it, he could play a little bit of wide receiver. Maybe, right? Maybe. But anyways, he is number 24. So keep an eye out for Ivan McDaniels. All right, so the 3 players in total that I am looking forward to seeing on Syracuse's defense, hopefully against Holy Cross this week, because it could be the only opportunity we get to really see these players in depth. KingJosepth Edwards, the 4-star recruit that a lot of us had high hopes for, not to say that he is fallen below expectations, but he is a true freshman. It does take time to grow into your role. I mentioned with Oronde Gadsden that he became a great player and wasn't great his true freshman year. Braheem Long Jr., the backup safety to Elijah Clark. Hopefully he can see the field. And Ivan McDaniels, the long, rangy corner, 3-star recruit, 6'3", behind Clarence Lewis. Hopefully we can see him on the field as well. So we've gone over the offensive players. We've gone over the defensive players that we are, or that I at least am hoping to see. Leave a comment in the comment section below the players that you're hoping to see on the field for Syracuse against Holy Cross, aside from the starters, aside from the usuals. There was one name that I omitted before I get to the prediction, and that was Jamie Tremble, the tight end, the 4-star recruit. The reason why I left him off the list is because, to my knowledge, or when I looked at that depth chart, I didn't see him on there. And if you're not on the depth chart, I'm going to assume that you're not playing, you're not dressing. So that's why I didn't have Jamie Tremble on the list of offensive players. So that's hopefully will clear some things up there with him. Not to say it's a bad thing, but he just wasn't on the depth chart. All right, coming up, prediction time. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll right in. Prize Picks, they put their members first. So all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Prize Picks also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money, even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And guys, some of the players that maybe I am looking at more or less this week, the big ones, Tyreek Hill, more or less than his receiving total. Who is going to be the starting quarterback in Miami? Is it Skylar Thompson or Tim Boyle? As a Jets fan, if it's Tim Boyle, I would probably take less on whatever Tyreek Hill's number is, but that's just me. Anyways, download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONCollege on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. It's prediction time for Syracuse and Holy Cross this Saturday at noon. We just went over some of the players that I am hoping to see on the field should the situation and time call for it. And hopefully this is the game that we see a lot of backups and young players playing because, guys, this is a game that Syracuse should win really easily. All right? Before anyone comes at me and saying, you're tempting fate with this, what's going on? Why are you trying to jinx the team? Guys, look, here's the deal. Stanford last week is an ACC team. Okay, they're Power 4. Are they a great Power 4 team? No. That's still Power 4, though. I said on the podcast, you got to show up. You still got to show up ready to play. Syracuse didn't come ready to play, and that's why they got punched in the mouth early and couldn't recover over time. Holy Cross this week is an FCS school. FCS, not FBS, FCS. FCS is even below Group of 5. Okay? And some Group of 5 teams are actually pretty good. FCS, okay? Holy Cross this season, keep in mind, they're in the FCS, is 1-3. 1-3. But have they played anyone that's like really good in the FBS? No. They haven't played an FBS team. Every team they have faced is FCS. They are 1-3 in FCS. Holy Cross has lost to Rhode Island, New Hampshire, and Yale. Albeit they've all been in tight games, but still, they're not beating those teams. All right, that's a problem. Their one win came actually at Bryant, for what it's worth. Now, having said that, I mean, Holy Cross did nearly knock off Boston College in Boston College last year. It was early in the season. But there's a couple things with that. Number one, that's Boston College, not Syracuse. Number two, it was a different quarterback than who's going to play for Holy Cross this week. Holy Cross's quarterback in that game was none other than Matt Sluka. Yes, that Matt Sluka, the same one that just opted out of the rest of the season for UNLV. He was the quarterback at Holy Cross last season when they nearly pulled off the upset to Boston College. But so clearly he is not going to be on the field for Holy Cross this week. All right. They also have a different coach. It was Bob Chesney for Holy Cross last season, who was actually in the running, or at least rumored to be in the conversation for the Syracuse job. Ultimately, it was Fran Brown who got it, but Bob Chesney was in that conversation. So they had a pretty good coach and they had a pretty good quarterback. And yeah, they nearly pulled off that upset. So it's a different coach, different quarterback. Their new head coach is Dan Caron. Earlier in the week, I gave you guys the stat with Dino Babers and his record against FCS competition and what he would do. And keep in mind, Dino Babers spent 8 years at Syracuse, 2016 to 2023, and was 41-55. So really, the Orange weren't very good. You don't need me to really tell you that, right? But that's the reality. They were not a great team, aside from 1 year in 2018 under Dino Babers. And they demolished FCS competition. Demolished them. They were 7-0, which is good, obviously. That's the best you can do, 7-0, right? And an average margin of victory of 45 points. So not only are they winning, they are winning the game by 6 to 7 touchdowns on average. That is why this podcast is about players that don't normally see the field, but we could see on the field. That's why I gave you guys the LaQuint Allen example against Wagner. That was a game where Syracuse, I believe, won 59-0, and most of the points were scored in the first half. Okay, in the second half, they did 10-minute running quarters. I don't think it's going to get to that point with Holy Cross, but that's kind of the idea of what you should expect for Syracuse in this game. If they play this game a million times, Holy Cross might win one. All right? 1,000,000 to 1 shot, I guess. All right? Also, all time. Keep in mind the all-time stats. Syracuse against FCS competition. They are 21-0. They are 21-0 all-time against FCS. Again, you can say I'm tempting fate all you want. I'm giving you the stats. I'm telling you that essentially if we have to sweat at any point in this game, it's going to be pretty disappointing. All right? I understand that players are not perfect, but what you're shooting for is You get out to a very comfortable lead. The game is over pretty quickly. The game is over hopefully by the end of the first quarter, if not halftime, and you can play your backups and young players in the second half. That is what you are really looking for in this one, all right? Most recent example for Syracuse against an FCS team was against Colgate last year. That was the season opener. They won 65-0. That's kind of what you're hoping for with Holy Cross. I do think it'll be a little bit closer than that. I have a little bit of respect for Holy Cross in that regard, I guess. So I'll say 45-10. How about that? 45-10, Syracuse over Holy Cross. Leave your score prediction in the comments section below. What do you think Syracuse is going to do against Holy Cross? And if you think I'm tempting fate, sure, I'm probably not going to be able to change your mind, but at least I was able to give you guys stats as to why I believe that this should just be a cakewalk for Syracuse. All right? Hopefully it is. Hopefully it is. All right? Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. For your second listen, go to Locked On College Football. From NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin has you covered this season on the gridiron. Find Locked On College Football on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And folks, as far as what's coming up on the podcast, I know at some point today, there is going to be that ACC squad episode once again on Thursdays. It could have been released before you are seeing this podcast. It could be after you are seeing this podcast. When I know it, I will leave a comment that is pinned in the comment section below and a link to that video as well. It's a doubleheader Thursday with that squad episode. And also tomorrow coming up, we got Poll Friday, a new season outlook potentially for Syracuse football. After their loss to Stanford, I had to ask you guys where you're at with how many wins you think Syracuse is going to get. So stay tuned for Poll Friday tomorrow. And then on Saturday, noon game, Syracuse is facing Holy Cross. There will be a postcast after it where hopefully we're reacting to Syracuse winning by 100 points. Hip, hip, hooray. And then don't forget, this is an important one to watch. UNLV is taking on Fresno State with a new quarterback. We talked about the Matt Sluka situation a little bit on the podcast yesterday. They have a new quarterback. They're facing Fresno State at 3:30. So just keep your eye out on that game because Syracuse is facing UNLV next Friday.